We have a lot of crime in humanity. Our jails are full. When there are new criminals caught, usually we have to make room for them by getting rid of older criminals out of the jails to bring in new ones in the jail, or simply stuff them in the jail. Why do we have so many criminals? What is the cause of criminality? Not white collar crime or upper ivory tower crime, which exists, but crime on the street. How does somebody turn into a criminal? How does somebody decide to become a criminal? There's a lot of forces that create this, and the main force is always poverty. When you can't eat, when you can't have a roof, and you're starving and you're freaking out, crime becomes a solution. You will steal something. You will get into drug dealing. You will get into some kind of scam. You will rob. You will get into a gang. Poverty is one of the biggest sources. There is such a thing as a bad birth on the planet and a good birth on the planet. A bad birth is where you don't have a lot of chance to thrive and to flourish. You're going to struggle to survive, and you're going to be smitten with mental defects that your parents gave you, or just a reaction to the environment where you're born. If you are born in a ghetto of poor, suffering people, you're going to develop terrible mental defects, as well as you will be penniless and you will struggle. And that will encourage crime. It's not that everybody who's poor becomes a criminal, obviously, but most of the crime comes from the poor. It doesn't come from the wealthy. I think one of the most misunderstood reasons for crime is sexual suppression. We live in societies where sex is still considered a sin, especially for women who have a different moral code than men. Sex is not easy in our society. Having sex is still, providing giggles and nervousness, and it's not easy to have a sexual life. In a sexual life, the pull towards a sexual life starts at around 12, 13 years old, where you need the sex, you don't need the babies. You need a lot of sexuality to grow physically, animally. We have an animal self that needs to grow through pleasure. Sex is a nutrient. Emotionally, we need romance. Sex provides a nutrient for all this type of growth, and sex is not allowed in our society. Sex is for marriage. This is a Stone Age conception promoted by the Bibles and by the old morals of humanity. Sex is good, and sex is required, and sex is good in adolescent especially. An adolescent without sex is terribly depressed. An adolescent without romance is terribly depressed. These are needs. Men and women are here. Girls and boys are here. There's an attraction. It's normal. It's natural. It's for growth purposes. There are bad relationships and good relationships. So we need good relationships. We don't need no relationships. We have 46% in 2007 or 2018, the Washington Post, it's close to present day values, unwanted pregnancies, which means there was sex and there was an accidental baby. This is about ballpark 50% of all births come from unwanted pregnancies. These are teenagers and adolescents who don't really want a baby, but because of the sex, they get a baby. Because they got no contraception. The means of contraception are not imposed by the state. We should have mostly good births. A good birth will allow for a good society. Bad births, hellish society. Accidental babies are not going to have a good life on the average. Unwanted pregnancies, pregnancies by teenagers or by little babies, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, 18-year-old having babies, that's not going to be a good birth. There's no maturity in the parent, There's usually no money in the parent. They can't support the kid. They can't give him a good life. That is going to create a child who will develop mental defects, possibly rage, anger, leading some of these teenagers to crime. Crime comes a lot from poverty and comes a lot from accidental pregnancies. The parents are neglecting the child. Why would a parent neglect a child? Because they didn't want it. They didn't want the child. That's why. And the child who is unloved can turn crippled inside, crippled emotionally, crippled animally, crippled even physically, and that could turn into a rage and anger that brings a criminal. Most of the criminals did not have good families. Most of the criminals did not have love. Most of the criminals did not have money. So why don't we cut the criminals at the source? The source is the bad birth. We have to prevent the bad birth and encourage the good birth. The more we have a situation of good births, the less criminals we will have on the street. Most of us have terrible adolescents. The ages of about 11 to about 18 or 19 years old are terrible. Teenager is one of the most terrible times in humanity because there's a starvation for sex and romance, which is discouraged by the parents, by the schools, by the institutions. It's more important to get straight A's in geometry and mathematics and history and in trigonometry and all those stupid to life bullshit courses that you will forget. It's more important to get A's than to actually be successful in the sexual and the romantic department, which is extremely important for the growth of an adolescent. We have a lot of deadbeat fathers in humanity. The men like to have the sex. They don't care about the baby. The baby's stuck with a mother who is infantile, who is poor, who doesn't have a job. That child has a strong propensity to get into crime. Right. Poverty, when you can't eat, you're capable of stealing. Guaranteed. You will go to the convenience store and steal a piece of bread because you can't eat. And you can't even blame that person for that. We need to get rid of this stigma that is placed on women's forehead, tattooed on their forehead, that they have to be virgins. This is one of the biggest problems that is actually creating the criminal element in the society. Right? Because of this resistance to say that a woman is not allowed to have her sexual experiences, the right to fuck, the right to have sex is equal for the man as it is for the woman. If we would understand this kind of thing, a lot less babies would be born. Contraception would be available. It has to become available, right? Easily, even free, right? Then there would be less accidental babies. Accidental babies will cause a lot of the criminals. We have to cut the crime at the source. The source is the womb that doesn't want the child. Even now, at the year 2020, sex is not relaxed in our society. You can't see a pair of breasts or a vagina or a penis like if it's some kind of evil or some kind of Satanism going on here. We're not at ease with sex. We don't understand that sex is normal, sex is fine, sex is good. Why are we so uptight about sex all the time? Where does this come from? It comes from the human heart and its moral values. It comes from the Bibles. It comes from thousands of years of sexual suppression. It comes from a sense that a woman is a possession of a man and that she needs to be a virgin. All of these concepts need to be thrown into the garbage. When you're 16, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, you go out, you party, you go to a club, you drink. You want to have sex, whether you're a man or a woman, but you don't want to have babies. Where is it that we encourage this kind of sexuality, which is normal, but we actually prevent the babies if they're born from this union. I mean, these are adolescents that are basically exploring romance and exploring sexuality. They have the right to explore romance and they have the right to explore sexuality, but they don't and they should not have the right to have babies because they're not matured and they don't have any money for the baby. They're not ready for any baby. We have a wrong life plan in humanity. We don't understand growth. We don't respect adolescence and the romantic and sexual needs of an adolescent. We don't respect that. We want them to go to school and study 80, 90% of subjects that they're going to forget. We don't even teach them rent, mortgage, the price of a car, the price of a home. What the hell is it that we're teaching them in schools? The crazy situation about crime is that poverty is one of the biggest sources of crime. You take a look at a country like Nigeria, the average baby per family is 6. A woman has on average 6 children under poverty, 6 poor kids, right? Is it any wonder that Nigeria is one of the biggest centers of internet crime? I mean, if we're ever going to have paradise on this planet, we need the good birth to outnumber the bad birth, which is not the case. Poor people breed a lot more than the wealthier, well-to-do, or well-being people. People who are more wealthy, they just want 1 or 2 kids. The people who are poor, they want 6 kids. Whoa, we're going to lose the war. We always lose the war. Poverty always wins over prosperity. We need new rules, new ways, a new understanding of life, and we need the soul to flourish in the good birth.